The number one reason most restoration companies don't spit out net profit is typically related to the number of jobs that they produce. A lot of times as mitigation companies, we focus on like the profitability of jobs and such, but if we actually bill properly for the work that we actually do, we should be able to hit good gross margins and good net profit. Now, the problem is if you don't have enough leads to basically sustain your operation, that's when your net profit actually shrivels up. And that's something we're currently facing at our family restoration business. We have the production capacity to handle 70 plus jobs per week, but we're actually bringing in less jobs every single week than those 70 that we could produce. And what that's causing is essentially our gross margins are looking super great, but our net income or our EBITDA has actually shrunk. There's actually two ways to solve this problem. Way number one is what most people focus on, and that's actually going out and getting more leads. And if you click the link below, we actually have a video on how to get more leads that we've released on LB After Hours. And then way number two is increasing your closing rate, which is something that most people don't think about. So here's the deal. Closing rate is actually the percentage of leads that you're able to convert into jobs. So let's say you need 5 jobs per week to absolutely crush your revenue numbers. And you're getting currently 10 leads per week and closing 3 of those leads into jobs. You could either go and get 15 leads per week to close 5 of them, or you can find a way to close more of those 10 leads and actually close 5 of the 10 leads that you are already getting. In this video, I'm gonna focus on the 4 steps to help you double your closing rate. So that way, if you get 10 leads, you can close 5 to 6 of them and you don't have to actually go and focus on getting more leads. Stay till the end where I'll give you the exact playbook that you can give your in-home sales reps to follow. And it's a step-by-step process that will double your closing rate. Let's dive in. So the first step towards doubling your closing rate is actually establishing a method of measuring your closing rate. Peter Drucker once said that if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. And a lot of us are running around and not even looking at what our closing rate currently is. So the way you measure closing rate, the simplest way, I know there's multiple ways out there, is to literally take the number of jobs that you have converted this week divided by the number of leads that you got this week. So if you got 20 phone calls from customers looking for your services and you went out to see 20 jobs, you only turned 10 of those into jobs, right? Your closing rate would be 10 divided by 20, which is 50%. What I would recommend is setting up a dashboard in your job management system, whether it's Albi, PSA, or Restoration Manager, and looking at the easiest way is the number of jobs that have the date of contract signed as true divided by the number of jobs created in the system. The second step to that is setting up a dashboard where everybody could see theirs, and that dashboard should be able to be broken down by project managers or by salespeople. And I like that because it gives complete transparency over the entire organization, and you can quickly pinpoint the people that are closing at a higher percentage than the people that are closing at a lower percentage. Then you can start asking yourself the question, why are these people closing higher than these other people? And then the third step is setting a clear goal and a clear expectation as to where you want your close rate. Most of the times, if I go into your organization and ask your project manager, hey, what should your closing rate be? They're like, I don't know. I just show up to the jobs and try to close them. It's very important to set a clear expectation on what that should be. I think if you're closing between 30 and 50%, you got room for improvement. If you're closing from 50 to 70%, you're doing really well. 70% plus, you're doing absolutely extraordinary. Now, keep in mind, these numbers vary based on the lead sources. So if you're doing like TPA work, your close rate's going to be a lot higher versus if you're getting a lot of insurance agent referrals, you're probably going to get a lot of BS leads from those insurance agents. Therefore, your closing rate is going to be lower. Bottom line is you need to set a goal and you need to align the entire team as to what is world-class closing rate or the closing rate standard for your specific organization. The second step towards doubling your closing rate is actually tweaking your organizational chart. Here's the deal. Every restorer has this fantasy dream that they're going to find these unicorns. And these unicorns sound like this. They're employees that can show up to the job, close the job, do the job, estimate the job, and collect on the job. But the reality is you as the restoration business owner can do all of that because you're an entrepreneur, but it's very hard to find an employee that could fit all of those responsibilities. And what I found when we were scaling our restoration organization is that the people that were really world-class at doing the work weren't the best at selling, and the people that were world-class at selling weren't the best at doing the work. So what I recommend is establishing a role like an emergency service project manager or an in-home first responder, whatever you want to call them, but a role of an individual who's going to show up to the job And their primary purpose is to close the customer, have the customer sign that work authorization and nothing else. And then afterwards, you have the role of a crew chief or a lead technician that can show up to that job and perform all the work, do all of the documentation, and make sure that we deliver on our promises to that customer. And then the third role would be the role of the estimator, who does all the Xactimate stuff and then sends it off to collections. The common problem of combining those three roles into one individual is you're not going to find that, individual that could do all of it. And you'll get like a jack of all trades and master of none. So even if you're a small organization listening to this, let's say less than $1 million a year, maybe you as the business owner take the responsibility of closing the jobs, and then you just go hire a really good crew chief that could actually produce. And then if you're sitting here asking, well, how in the world am I going to find a separate estimator? I can't afford that. You can find an estimating company. So for example, Oak Estimates is awesome, and they could take everything from estimation to sending the Xactimate estimate to the insurance company and negotiating and collecting it. Some others that we've worked with is, One Claim Solutions, RMS, I think, does some. There's a lot of different solutions that you can find out there. The third step is actually establishing a consistent sales process. You see, most people think that sales just requires this charisma. Think of the used car salesman. He's flashy, has the cologne on, and can really relate to people and can get people to really sign the dotted line. But in reality, the best salespeople are kind of boring. They follow the step-by-step process with every single freaking customer. And the best world-class sales organizations you'll find have the step-by-step process, and it's rather operational versus charisma-like. Now, don't get me wrong, there's a little bit of charisma involved, but you definitely don't need to hire the super type A salespeople that are going to bounce around the walls and they won't be able to follow a process. And having a clear, consistent process that all the different project managers, including yourself as an owner, follow is very important, because if everybody's doing the same thing, then you can start pinpointing, well, why do we have these closing rate differences? And that's how you can easily find out where people are not following the specific process. Now, I have an entire restoration closing rate maximizer that I've actually taught to our Evolve Mastermind clients, and I'm going to actually promise to give you that here today. So in the link below, you'll find the whole workbook and the video training. But my recommended restoration sales process sounds something like this. The first step of the restoration sales process is actually the first impression, and most people completely skip over this. So if you show up to somebody's loss in the middle of the night and you pull in a dirty truck, pulling in on their driveway, show up to the door, knock on the door and stand right in front of the door, and you're not nice and clean cut and you're just scaring the customer, you're probably not going to get that specific loss. Versus what I teach people is actually that the first impression is the most important one. So teaching your project managers to actually pull up on the side of the road, not parking in the homeowner's driveway, to take a quick second to look at how they're dressed and make sure that, hey, their polos tucked into their shorts and, they're clean and they don't have coffee stains all over themselves, to grab their, professional toolkit that looks nice and professional. Come to the door, knock on the door, take 3 steps back, take a nice position where they're standing up straight, kind of like how a first responder would show up to the loss, is an awesome way to immediately start building that rapport. And from that first impression is where you're going to either increase the likelihood of closing that job or not. Rewind back, the first impression is actually the phone call. So if you're not properly answering and handling the phone call and you're offshoring to an answering service, your likelihood to close those jobs drops from that first phone call. The second step is actually establishing this thing called the illusion of control. And here's the hot take on this one. No homeowner wants to have a restoration contractor show up into their house at 2:00 in the morning. In fact, none of the homeowners chose, and it wasn't in their control, that the pipe burst in the middle of the ceiling and now they have to deal with all of this. And when people feel like they're not in control, they get anxious and they can't make proper decisions. And it is your job as a person, as a first responder trying to close a restoration job, to establish and give the illusion to the homeowner that they're in control. And you do this by overstating certain things. And it starts with the minute you're at the door. Knocking on the door, taking 2 steps back, makes them feel in control on whether they let you into the house or not. Asking them if you should keep your shoes on or take them off, regardless of the fact that they're going to say, yeah, keep the shoes on because there's water all over the place, is a way you could establish that illusion of control. When you walk into the kitchen and you're about to look at the cupboards and open them up to see where the leak comes in, asking them the question of, hey, may I open up the cupboards, even though it's obvious that they're going to let you, establishes that illusion of control. So it's very important to do these things and kind of go overboard with asking that specific homeowner questions prior to you doing things. It makes them feel like they're in control, and it makes them feel like they have the option to say no and stop. And that'll build the confidence and build the rapport, which brings me to my next step. The next step is actually immediate value. Before you even put a work authorization in front of the homeowner's face, before you even ask for the sale, you need to go there and deliver immediate value. And there's many ways you can find that. My favorite are sump pump failures, for example, because you'll show up and there's like 2 feet of water in the basement and you're asking the homeowner, hey, may I go in? May I go to the sump pump and take a look? Sometimes you can give that sump pump a little bit of a shake and the floater gets unstuck, the pump kicks on, and then you start seeing all the water in the basement getting taken out of the basement. Imagine the relief on that homeowner when they're sitting there and you've literally solved half their problem because they had 2 feet of water in the basement and they're literally watching the water as it goes down. Or check this out. You have a burst pipe and you go turn off the water and the homeowner goes from chaos, there's water literally shooting into their kitchen, to now that water is no longer shooting. Everything's still wet, but you delivered immediate value because you eliminated that stressor. So you always want to look at the immediate value that you could provide. Another story that's my favorite is actually I show up to a fire scene and the homeowner was worried about their cat. The fire department wasn't able to find the cat, and it was a very important part of their family. I knew that this homeowner wasn't going to talk to me about repairing their house or emergency services and such because their mental space was blocked with the cat. So I decided to go into the basement, waded through waist deep water, and eventually found the kitty up on top of this bookcase. Grabbed the kitty, went back to the homeowner, brought the kitty to the homeowner. Guess who sold the job? So finding ways to deliver immediate value before asking for anything in return is the next step of the process, and you should follow this on every single loss. And I bet you every single loss, whether it's a giant loss or a small loss, there's some sort of immediate value you could provide to that homeowner. The next step is discovery. And here's the deal. Most restorers want to show up and geek out. Well, per the IICRC 500 standard, we need these many air movers and these many dehumidifiers. And, we're going to use Benefect antimicrobial because, you can drink it and so on and so forth. That's the wrong way to do it. The homeowner doesn't give a crap about the IICRC 500 standard, all these things. In fact, if you don't do discovery, you don't know what the homeowner cares about. So it's very important after you deliver the immediate value to ask questions to the homeowner of what do they care about. And it's simple. It's kind of like dating. You just ask questions, right? Well, what's important to you? What's the most stressful part about this? Are there any areas of the house that I should be worried about? Are there any concerns or anything that's stressing you right now? Doing discovery, because when you pitch your product and service to that homeowner, it needs to match up to the problems that you discovered and the things that you've discovered that were important to that specific homeowner. Then the next thing that you have to do is build rapport. And throughout this entire process, what you're doing is you're building rapport and trust with the homeowner. And there's a bunch of different ways you could do rapport, and these steps that we outlined before, kind of highlight that. But the best way I think about rapport is just having a conversation and establishing common ground with that homeowner. And the best way to think about that is, imagine if you were stuck with this homeowner in an airplane, an aluminum tin can, and you had to talk to that person for 4 hours. What do you think you'd talk about? And there's actually common buckets that you could talk about. Things like the hometown, or where they're from, because the number one thing we always ask people is like, well, where are you from? If you notice anything related to their family or to their kids, that's another thing. Hobbies, and finding mutual interests of hobbies or people that that maybe play the sports that they like and such is another one. And then what do they do for work, and establishing common ground there. And again, part of discovery is asking those types of questions, and it's a personable conversation. But if you can find a connection, like imagine if your nephew plays hockey and they absolutely love hockey, that's an amazing way you build rapport. And every single loss that you follow, you should build some sort of rapport before the next step, which is the ask. So we brought them immediate value. We gave them the illusion of control. We built awesome rapport. Now comes the ask. And the ask basically needs to look like this. Hey, I discovered these are all of your pain points. Are you willing to sign this work authorization that will allow me to provide you this service that will check off all of these boxes? Kind of irresistible, right? Because at the end of the day, insurance is paying for some of it. They might have a deductible or something out of pocket to pay, but you've literally checked all their boxes. And the likelihood of them saying yes to the ask is very high at this point. So that's the next step. After the ask, they're either going to say, yeah, absolutely, and sign your work authorization, cha-ching, you won, or they're going to say no. When they say no, you want to get into the next phase, which is objection handling. So they said no, well, why? And then they're going to give you objections like, oh, I need to look for multiple prices. The best way to handle objections is to basically repeat back the discovery and dig in deeper with questions as to why they're looking for multiple estimates to basically find the root cause of why, and then give them a solution to that specific problem. Are you willing to sign this work authorization? No, I really want an estimate. Well, why do you want an estimate? Is there something that you're afraid of that may happen? Well, yeah, I just don't know how much insurance is going to cover. I don't know what my maximum out of pocket's going to be and such. Then you go back with the ask. Well, what if on this specific work authorization, I put in that your maximum out of pocket's going to be $5,000, which just so happens to be your deductible? Would that be, something you'd be willing to do? And then they'd probably say yes, and you sign it. So you want to find creative ways to take that objection, dig in deeper. Don't just react to it right away. Sometimes you just ask why, and you ask more questions to discover the true intent of why that homeowner doesn't want to sign the specific work authorization. And then the next step is to close, which is basically, hey, okay, awesome. Let's sign the work authorization. Let me call a crew in. And the final step is the follow-up. So if you actually don't get the loss and they say, no, we're going to actually get multiple estimates, we'll be in touch. Well, having a cadence to follow up. Because most of the time, you're walking out of there and you're never following up with the homeowner, and you never know. You could just pick up the phone and call them and say, hey, how'd it go with that other company when they came out? And establish more rapport during that phone call, reference some of the things that you had during the phone call, and something as simple as a follow-up could actually close the deal. So 1, first impression. 2, illusion of control. 3, immediate value. 4, discovery. 5, rapport. 6, the ask. 7, objection handling. 8, the close. 9, follow-up. So if you don't know why you're winning, it's going to be temporary. And if you don't know why you're losing, it's guaranteed to be permanent. So there's 3 things that I like doing to ensure that we're rewarding positive behavior and we're learning from the negative behavior. And the first one's very simple. Praise. Just simply going around, and if you see a project manager or an employee doing really well on the close rate side, just saying, hey, look, you're doing awesome. You closed that job. Good job, right? The second part is compensation. Establishing a compensation structure where based on close rate, they can earn more. My opinion on compensating sales reps is that, these in-home sales reps should have a 50% split between base and commission, right? So if they're making $150,000 a year, $75,000 of that is like a base and it's guaranteed. The other $75,000 is earned based on commission on them closing the jobs. And if you're going to take a commission rate, you should split that up by closing percentage. So if they're closing sub 30%, maybe they're only making 2% commission. But if they're closing between 30% and 50%, they're making 3% commission. If they're closing over 50%, they're making 4% commission, for example. So their compensation should be tied so that way they feel it in their pockets, monthly basis, that if they have a really good close month, they're going to make a lot more money. And if they don't, they're going to not make as much. And then the third one is coaching. Super, super important. And my favorite framework for this is just simply doing a wins, wants, and opportunities analysis with your reps, right? So every single week we'd sit down on a one-on-one and I'd ask, let's spend 5 minutes, throw on some lo-fi hip hop beats. Let's write down some wins that you've had this week. And then what about some wants and some opportunities? The wins are things that obviously we did really well. The wants, that's where we failed or fell short, but we call them wants. And then the opportunities are things that we kind of got, but we haven't figured them out yet. And it's great because that gives you the framework to praise the wins. Hey, we feel really good that we won here. But then you go into the wants, and the main question here is, what are we learning from these wants? What could you do differently next week to avoid these quote unquote failures? And that's where the magic happens, in constantly and consistently coaching our team towards success. So wrapping everything up, if you want to double your closing rate at your restoration company, the 4 simple steps are as follows. The first one is just establish the measurement of your closing rate and set an expectation of the goal of your close rate across all reps. The second one is tweak your organizational chart to support the closing rate to go up. The third one is establish a boring process that everybody follows step by step. And the fourth thing that you should do is establish a coaching cadence where you praise people for the awesome things that they do with verbal praise and cash, and then you learn with them on the shortcomings. And lastly, as promised, in the link below, we have the whole playbook that I outlined above that you guys can download for free. No gated content or anything like that. You just click on the link and download that. If you like this content and want to hear more, hit that subscribe button, as we're trying to get 1,000 subscribers within the next month. Greatly appreciate that. If you get stuck, Comment below or DM me online at It's Alex Duda, and I'll do my best to unblock you there. And then if you want to learn more about how to get more leads, click this next video and I'll see you on the other side.